we're not going to use any weapons unless you cross our state border. It is also the border of the Union State. These are the words of our Commander-in-Chief, Alexander Lukashenko. Today, the only factor deterring hot-headed politicians remains nuclear weapons. Neither diplomacy, nor international agreements, nor the presence of the most modern weapons. All have taken a back seat. The deployment of tactical nuclear weapons on Belarusian territory is a very wise decision by the leaders of the Union State. Alexander Grigorievich, by bringing tactical nuclear weapons home, understood it was the only way to save the country from war. And that's how it turned out. We continue to live under a peaceful sky without even thinking about why our borders are still locked. A 120,000-strong Ukrainian military group on the southern border, about 10,000 NATO troops on the western frontiers. Belarusian territory within a 2,000-kilometer radius is literally mined. Ukrainians have already created several lines of defense, scattering mines on every meter. The Baltics and Poland are building fences, constructing fortified areas, digging trenches, and daily asking the European Union for money for all this. But the neighbors do not plan to stop there. Poland has been persuading the Americans for a year to place nuclear weapons on its territory. The White House is still thinking. Following Warsaw, Latvia also wants to hide under the nuclear umbrella. In August, Riga began collecting signatures for the deployment of deterrent weapons in the country. Agree, it would be strange if Belarus did not react to the aggressive militaristic policy of its neighbors. Therefore, we emphasize again, the presence of nuclear weapons in Belarus is a guarantee of its security. No one will trust Western partners at their word anymore. Belarus has learned the lessons of the past once and for all. Recall, for giving up nuclear weapons, the UK, USA, and Russia provided the Republic with security guarantees. They were recorded in Budapest, in the Budapest Memorandum of December 5, 1994. The leaders of the powers promised Belarus that weapons would never be used against its territorial integrity and political independence. They assured that they would refrain from economic coercion aimed at subordinating Belarus to their own interests. Today, 30 years later, we see that loud promises and statements turned out to be a soap bubble. Recall, in November 1996, at the Yatsuki station near Lida, there was a solemn farewell to nuclear missile complexes. The last wagons left Belarusian territory to the sounds of a military march and the watchful eyes of foreign diplomats. The head of state was against this decision, but the verdict was made before his presidency began. In a 2003 interview with journalists, he said, "We gave up nuclear weapons. We lost a huge amount of money." I'm not talking about political costs. By the way, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Belarus was the 8th country in the world in terms of nuclear weapons. Belarusian secret strategic missile forces at that time were armed with both intercontinental ballistic missiles and medium and short-range missiles. Their removal from our country's territory was the result of signing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Today, the USA and the West have pounced on Belarus, accusing the countries of violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. But who are they to talk? America violated agreements long ago. According to the document's provisions, the status of nuclear powers as the only legitimate members of the nuclear club is recognized for Russia, the USA, the UK, France, and China. In recent years, American authorities have cynically violated the treaty's provisions. It is no longer hidden that the USA has transferred modernized tactical nuclear bombs to Europe. Their delivery and installation at NATO bases in European countries took place back in 2022. Seeing the constant violations by world leaders, Russia withdrew from the treaty last year. Let's return to Belarus and summarize. Nuclear weapons have long been in the country. Their deployment sites are prepared according to requirements. Also, some Belarusian aircraft have already been converted to use munitions with nuclear warheads. Pilots are trained, Missile operators are also up to date. The crews of the Iskander operational tactical complexes have repeatedly undergone training in Russian Federation training centers. Today, world leaders declare control over non-proliferation, reducing the pace of nuclear weapons production. This is a lie. The world continues to be filled with uranium and plutonium mixes. About 13,000 units are stored on Earth today. More than 2,000 tests have been conducted. Let's repeat. The language of diplomacy no longer works. Ambitions are off the charts, and verbal threats are being turned into artillery and tanks. We need to find means to stop the tragedy. Nuclear weapons are the only way to maintain peace in our state. Meanwhile, NATO does not hide that it is preparing for a third. The global alliance is developing plans, including the mass evacuation of the